So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Dr. Katharine Esty, class of 1952. Katharine has worn many hats over the years, beginning as a student at the Northampton School for Girls, then teaching at the Northampton School for Girls, and later serving on the Williston Northampton Board of Trustees in the early 90s as the first woman president of the board. Outside of this, Katharine is a social psychologist, author, and retired business executive. And if that's not enough, she also raised 4 boys. Currently, Katharine lives just outside of Boston and has written an award-winning self-help book, which you will hear more about during this presentation. And it sounds like a number of you may have already read it, which is fabulous. Today we're going to just discuss about how we can all live happier, more fulfilling lives despite the challenges of aging and COVID-19. So I think this will be a wonderful presentation. And we thank Katharine for doing this for us today. So if you just give me a moment, Katharine, I'm going to put the spotlight onto you. If I can find you in my list here.
I think if I, okay.
Katharine, you're on mute. Do you see you can unmute yourself at the top? Let's see if I can do this for you. Sherry, are you able to help me unmute Katharine?
Okay.
Thank you.
I think I'm unmuted now. Hey.
Yep.
Again, good afternoon to everybody. Thank you all for coming, and I'm excited to talk with you all, fellow members of the Williston Northampton alumni body. And I'm also happy to talk about aging well, because that's what I'm thinking about now. So I bring some good news about aging from recent research, and hopefully there are things that you haven't yet heard about, because I'm finding many people don't really know what aging is like today. And so I'm going to share what I've learned in my own research. And then we're going to have time for your questions, your comments. I'm interested in that I write blogs now, and how I keep learning is by talking with people like yourselves. So I'd love whatever your comments are, whatever your questions are. We'll get to them after I'll make some initial comments here, talk for a while, then we'll have some time to talk. So this is the book I wrote. That's the cover. It's called 80 Somethings, a practical guide to letting go, aging well, and finding unexpected happiness. So let's have the next screen, please. And here's just a list of, Corinne really did a beautiful job of telling about my many hats. And I'm actually, one of the things I'm doing that she didn't mention, and I still work. I'm a practicing psychotherapist. So I have a small practice that I've kind of kept doing even during COVID on Zoom. And the other thing I could add to this list here is that just so that we sort of get in the mood of full disclosure and sort of frank conversation about what's really going on. I'm 86 years old, and I weigh 137 pounds, just so you have the full picture here. Next slide, please.
Yep, I'm sorry.
Oh, so I want to start with just a few facts about life expectancy. Maybe you know some of this, but life expectancy in the US, it was 79. Actually, it's going down a little bit, but it's way above where it was even in the 1930s when I grew up. And when Thomas Jefferson was alive, it was only 37. And one of the facts that people often don't know is that if you actually make it to 80, your life expectancy goes way up. For men, it's 7 more years, and for women, 9 more years. And then, if you, like me, reach 86, your life expectancy goes up again. So that what we have is that all of us are living so much longer than any other time in history, and that most people will have this enormous privilege of living long, of longevity. But just to put another little fillip in the story, life expectancy in the US is, as I said, between 78, 79, but we're not the best in the world. In Hong Kong and other places, Japan, it's 84. So we've got some things to do to make this privilege more available to more people. Got some learning. I want to talk about what old age is. I want each of you to think about when you were in school at Williston or Northampton School, and think about how you thought about old people. What did you see about old people from looking at your own grandparents? Because a lot of us, I would like you to kind of remember what you thought. I know what I thought was my 4 grandparents, both grandfathers were dead. And one grandmother was bedridden. So old age didn't look so hopeful to me. My other grandmother had a pretty interesting life. She was tooting around in her car and had a rose garden. But she was also spending a lot of time talking about genealogy, which bored me at the time. But here are some of the beliefs that we grew up with, but that are also still alive and well. Many people hold on to these. There are things like we grew up thinking you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Most old people are frail, slow, and sick. Old people aren't interested in sex. Old people are grouchy and grumpy. Old people are set in their ways and usually worried and often depressed. So that's a lot of the common beliefs that circulate about that some of us still cling to. But there is good news that most of these have been disproved, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So next slide, please. So the good news that comes from recent research that's in the last 20 years is that the big headline, I think, for all of us to have is that most people, when they are in their 80s, but also in their 70s and so on, but I wrote about 80s, that people are happier, much happier than they expected to be. They didn't expect some of them be alive, but they certainly didn't expect to be having as much fun as they are and so happy. The research, academic research, a lot of my research comes from this woman, Laura Carstensen, who's written about happiness as well as I have, and longevity. And she finds that she does a lot of brain research, and the reason that explains why people are happier than they expected to be is that in spite of COVID, which was a huge stressor for us all, this was like one major big stress test lasting a year, older people, their brains kind of calm down. And so we are less worried and less angry than we were. We might still be angry and we still worried at times, and I did notice that my cohort got through the pandemic. It was our children that were more stressed than we were on the whole. And there's been now kind of new people coming out with that. I'll just say what kind of research I did for my book that came out a year ago. I had this question in my mind as I turned 80. That was when I started this new research. I was kind of in a funk, and I thought, well, what is it really like to be in your 80s? What are the possibilities? What could I find out about being older? And so I decided to interview 128 people, men, women, Black, white, Hispanic, rich, poor, New Englanders, living in a nursing home, living in their own house, Western people. And I had these long interviews and I wanted to find out what it was really like. And the biggest headline was that they were way happier than they expected to be. And so let's go to the next good news, new slide. Yeah. That the next news is that most elders, people 70s but 80s, are pain-free and lead active lives. And you think about, again, our grandparents, how modern medicine has changed, that now first of all, in our childhood, I had an appendicitis when I was 3, and there were no drugs for me. I was really sick because I was, but now we have not only all kinds of medicines and drugs, but our lives are made better by so many of us have new knees, new hips, some people even I just heard of someone and they got a double lung, but new parts of our heart. We just are able to have all kinds of patching and repair work that just leads us to live a life that is full and active. And that what I think so many of us are dreading about old age is the idea that maybe we'll be in constant pain, and that is much, much, much rarer than, and that most people in their 70s and 80s are pain-free and active. So that is good news. Next slide. The other news is that it was common in the common mind that people weren't interested in sex and weren't sexually active even after they were 50 or 60. I know I once remember my son seeing a couple that were 40 years old holding hands, and he said, well, isn't that pretty good for them? I mean, people had the idea that there was nothing, no intimacy. But what my research showed, and so has the other many people that are interested in what kind of intimacy and sexual activity is going on, that people in their 80s, only 25% of them are actually having sexual intercourse, but everyone is still interested in intimacy and being close and have sexual feelings. And one of the people I interviewed on this about out west, and he was in a retirement community in San Diego. He said to me, well, we have a lot of couples here, but he said there aren't many one-night stands among the 80 set. And that's true, but there's a lot of intimacy and people now growing into understanding kind of what real intimacy is about and able to get close in some ways more than they've ever been before. So that is good news too. Next slide. So more on the aging brain. Another person that I've read a lot of is Becca Levy at Yale. And she has she's one that has written about how the stereotypes are no longer true, and also writes about neuroplasticity, which is a good fancy word to learn if you don't know it already, which many of you may well. But it talks about that the brain, we're finding, has a capacity to heal itself. So, I grew up thinking, I heard in my childhood that every drink you have, you lose a few brain cells. And so as somebody who has a glass of wine at night, I kind of expected by the time I was 80, I might have very few brain cells left. But that's far from the truth. The truth is that our brains can continue to develop. We can continue to learn all kinds of things up to the day we die. And that we can heal ourselves even from some things like depression, that there are now ways to heal and get over that, so that our life isn't one of, when we are over 65, of constant decline, which was the image many of us had, that you go up to here, then you start declining. Far from it. It's a better image as we have childhood, adulthood, and then we have what could be called elderhood. And in that time, we grow and develop and continue to evolve. And so it's a constant growth, not a constant decline. So that's good news, more good news. Next slide. guidelines for aging well. Having those, so I've given you then some of the big headlines about the character of what people in their 80s and 70s can expect. That there are these factors that make life, open us up doors for us, and that life is not a sense of just decline, but of continued development. But we've all been through this recent, as I was calling it, enormous stress test of COVID, and a major pandemic, and then all of us are aging at whatever age we are. So I've kind of come up with, for me, having talked with these 128 people and seen who seems to be flourishing and who seems not to be flourishing, some guidelines for how to live, what to pay attention to. And I think all of us have to realize that we carry in our brain these internalized negative thoughts about aging, and that it takes a practice and an awareness and a consciousness to kind of shout those down and say, test them and see if they're really true. We also, I think, need to stay for a good life as an older person. We need to be constantly and deeply connected to our friends, our family, and our community. I think what we learned from the pandemic was that social isolation is not only uncomfortable and we are unhappy, but that it's not good for our physical health, that people don't thrive when they're socially isolated. I know at my retirement community, there was a 8-week, 10-week period where we weren't even supposed to go outdoors or in the halls. And it was, people wilted, and it wasn't good for them. And we're also learning that it's what makes you happy is not just the deep relationships, but also the casual relationships, that the people that you pass every day when we have normal life, the people where you get your coffee, the mailman, the people that are neighbors and you just wave to, but never talk more. But those are things that buoy you and give your life joy. And also that we're learning that if your attitude is important, so that will help you to live well. So we have the next thing, the guideline for aging well is that having a purpose, we've learned, has really, the people with a clear purpose thrive, flourish, bloom, whatever you want. And it can be anything, a purpose. It can be writing something, or helping in a soup kitchen. It can be taking care of a grandchild now and then. It can be having a garden. But then, and I think Viktor Frankl is the one I went back to on this. He wrote about being in a concentration camp, and what a shock it was that it wasn't the biggest and the hardiest and the most robust people that lived longest. It was the people that had a purpose, someone they wanted to get home to, a book they wanted to write. So a purpose is important at any age, and that's something that is truly bigger than yourself that engages you. The other thing is that the attitude of exploration and adventure, that we can, it's not being on permanent robot, just kind of it's being mindful of what's happening and exploring what's possible. And one of the things I think that is most important, that is mindfulness, which is the key, I think, to aging well, is to be aware, to be conscious, to be making each day different than the one before, and trying something new. It doesn't have to be dramatic things, but just not settling into routines where one day blurs into the other, but having small adventures, no matter how small, because that's what makes for joy and aging. Okay, so let's have the next slide there. I like this quote, which is that we must be willing to let go of the life we planned so as to have the life that is waiting for us. And that sort of speaks to the fact that you can't plan everything. Our life changes, it evolves, and each thing that happens changes. It opens new possibilities, opens new doors, closes some doors. And I think all of us learned that so profoundly in the last year. So what I'll have the next slide too, just and I just want to say before we go to the questions now, that's kind of my opening comments. I hope all of you, if you're interested in, I'm writing a blog about once a month on aging well. So I hope you'll read the book, but I hope if you want to sign up, I'd love to have you get my blogs, and you can go to my newsletter, but I hope they'll send this out to you so you'll have it in front of you to go to my website and then sign on for these blogs if you are interested in aging well. And then you can buy the book too, which is the next slide. But let's us go now. This is so it's you can buy it on Amazon. If you go to Amazon, you can buy it in some bookstores. It's you can order it, and it's I think a perfect for it's perfect for our aging, if you're in the middle age, for your aging parents, and if you are aging yourself, it's perfect for your 50, 40, 60, 40-year-old kids who don't know what it is to age. And I think so many of us spend our middle years dreading being old. And if they can sort of see another model of what aging can be, and the book is so upbeat without being in denial about the hard things that happen. I mean, it's not a paste over of reality, but it is upbeat. And so that's why I found that people get something out of reading it. But now I'd love to hear your comments, your questions, what struck you, what your own thoughts about aging are, what you've learned. And so I guess, Corinne, you're going to manage to see whose hands up or who has a question. And
Yes, Katharine, thank you so much. That was fabulous. All very encouraging and uplifting news for all of us. Before we dive into the questions, though, if everyone can put themselves back into gallery view, which is at the top of your screen, that will help us open the floor a little bit easier for a discussion here. And I'm just looking at the chat quickly. And so again, if you just want to raise your hand using the chat, you can just say that you have a question and I can call on you. And I see Rich Brown, you have a question. So do you want to kick things off here? You can unmute yourself and.
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me?
yes,
Yeah.
Good.
Okay, so my observations, certainly in the UK, is that people who get older get more risk averse in almost a straight line relationship. And they become more wary and cautious. Is that something, Katharine, that you recognize? Is there any scientific evidence for that, or is that wrong, in fact?
Well, I think some people in the past, I think that's one of the old ways that people think about it. You see it, that some people are very risk averse, but others, you think about all the people that travel all over the older populations taking these trips, these Rhodes Scholar trips, and driving across the country. There are people here in America that get in their vans and head out for a month on the road. So I don't think it's universal. I don't. I think if for some people, they kind of do fall into that. But I wouldn't say that it's, I'm not even sure it's more half the people. I think that, I think we all got risk averse or more risk averse during the pandemic. But I think we've seen how damaging it is to our health to be, to limit our lives and to not be seeing other people, not going out, not doing different things. So I think there's a big push. And even in Great Britain, they worry about it. You have a minister of loneliness that is kind of interesting. Did you know that? I mean, both.
No, I didn't know that. I've never met him or her.
And in Japan has one too, because the research is showing that people that loneliness, which is different from just being isolated, loneliness is when you are not able to be with anybody that has meaning to you, that the people you care about, you can't be with. And that is not good for your health. And it's so many people that in Great Britain, they actually started this new post, which was this minister of loneliness, to work at the community level to get people out to community centers. And in America, there's an age-friendly, well, it's actually from the World Health Organization, age-friendly movement, which is, again, trying to make cities more user-friendly, because that's good for not only everybody has more fun, but everybody lives longer. But it's your impression that most people are risk averse. And, I don't know, I haven't actually read any statistics.
Not necessarily most people, but that it's the people that tend to get more, those who are prone to this tend to get more risk averse as they get older.
Well, I'm in this
not applying to everybody, Doug.
No, I'm in this retirement community. We have this committee, and it's called COVID Advisory Committee. And there are a couple of people that are so risk averse. Anything that anybody suggests, like they say, no, I don't, and they really want everyone to stay in their room and not go out at all. So I think some people, and then other people get, I, for one, and as I said, my experience was that people older than 60 were less panicky than the people that were 40 and 50. I don't know if any of you have seen that too.
Okay, and the other point I was going to raise was about, I think at one point you said that people are still very alert right into old age. We have an increasing problem in Europe with dementia.
There is
how does that fit into your model?
Yes, well, that is a huge problem. But even dementia, there is a good news piece of science that the onset of dementia seems to be related to education. And so if you're heavily educated and well educated, as we all are, having started out at the school, it is postponed. And they find that the average, and as the country's more educated, the average onset is moved like 3 or 4 years in just the last 10 years. So it's getting later and later. Now it is completely crippling, sad, and I see that here all the time. So it's common. So that is one of the realities of old age that is you can't just say it's good, all good news. It isn't, and nobody wants to have dementia. But I've learned more about dementia during the last years. What I've learned is that people that have dementia, after a certain point, they're happy. It's the people around them that are suffering because their loved one is, sort of gone. But people themselves, but it is a real issue, and I think to be feared, right? But all of you that are doing crossword puzzles and learning languages and taking adult courses and are staving it off. So
thank you, Katharine. That was very helpful, very useful answers. Thank you.
Thank you. Katharine, I have a couple of questions that are coming in here. One is, for the adult child of an aging parent, how do you deal with your parents' depression, whether they express it or you perceive it?
Yeah, that's a problem. And I think one of the the fact is that to be depressed is not part of being old. So if your aging parent seems depressed, that is not part of just being old. It's you want to get them right away to a PCP or a psychiatric person that can evaluate them. Because some people now, they just need a little medication, a little Prozac, and they'll be fine. And if they are clinically really depressed, they need help even more. Then there are people that may need heavy duty kind of medication. So and then, of course, the problem is if you're the child, an adult child with an aging parent, you run into the problem they don't do everything you want, and you may think they should go to the doctor. And the fact is, they don't want to go to the doctor, and they don't believe that they'll say, I don't believe in medication. There's nothing wrong with me. This is, of course, it's because I'm old, it's depressing. You're going to be depressed when you're my age too. So I think that's where it takes finesse and charm and working with your parent. And usually sometimes it takes bringing a third person in, getting the doctor to tell them that, that they need, or getting another sibling that, I know one family that has such an interesting relationship with they have a mother who's like, I think 85, about my age. And there are 3 kids in the family, and the two daughters and a son. And one daughter they put in charge of kind of emotional things with the mom, because she can read her moods and cheer her up and connect with her there. One of them is good bookkeeper, so she does mom's finances because mom can't do it anymore. And then the son is brought in when they need somebody she'll listen to when she needs to go to the doctor. Then he has a big loud voice, and he can kind of get her to go to the doctor. So you have to figure out a game plan. But they also, that family, I was particularly interested in, and when I interviewed both the mom and the one of the daughters. They had a weekly meeting on Thursdays with their mom, that all 4 of them would be together, just maybe a 20-minute call just to check in, because they were all far apart, which is one of the dilemmas of modern age, where many of us aren't with our relatives any longer, and we're trying to manage them. You're trying to manage it long distance, and it doesn't work. It's easily. But they had this Thursday call, but they also had an early morning Thursday call where they could kind of alert each other if there were issues, and kind of come together on what they wanted. And they had been doing that for like 4 years when I interviewed. And it was just a communication system for the modern world, I thought, that was an interesting model. And I thought that it worked so well for them that I like to tell people about it.
And I have another question here from Liz Grazie. Would you like me to ask it on your behalf, or would you like to unmute? Okay. And I'm so sorry for your recent loss. Liz says she's a very recent widow, and she's wondering how to see the immediate future. She's 72 years old, has wonderful neighbors, family, and 2 grandsons, and is wondering how to reformat her life.
Well, I'm so sorry for your loss. I mean, and it's hard. There's I mean, losing a spouse is the hardest thing in the world. And you're only 72, which to me is, I call young, from my vantage point. So I think I've just been writing a bit about grieving, and our culture doesn't really teach us how to grieve. So I think that's the first job, really, just to get with the grieving, and which I'm sure you have. But I just wrote something recently about how to grieve, because most people don't know. And I think we've all had losses. We haven't had the biggest loss, but many of us lost a friend in COVID, or somebody we cared most deeply about. But I think a spouse is the hardest. And I think it's where you learn. I went through this, in 2015, my husband died. And one of the things I learned to do was to not say, well, not to be a bother. I mean, we were all brought up to be stoical. And so I have to learn. So like when people would invite me out, and they would say, well, we'll come get you. And so I had to learn, yes, I don't want to drive at night. So that would be nice if I will let people do things for me. So And I realize it's when you're ready, it's important to get out and see people, but you have to wait and feel it. I remember once I was invited to a party and I thought, well, I should go. And then I just realized I wasn't anywhere near ready to go to a party. So you have to kind of realize, just look at your own inner weather and take your time. And it's, some people it takes, one of the things of being in a retirement community, which I am, is people take care of people who've had recent losses and they don't leave them in their rooms. So they take, they do are part of a community, which helps. So whatever community you're in, whether it's seeing your grandsons, the 2 grandsons, or the church, if you're in a church, you need that, and some people, people don't know how to handle it, because some people say, well, I'm not going to bother you, Liz, because I know you want to be alone. Well, sometimes you want to talk. And I found I like to talk about my husband. And so I appreciated what people said, what can I do? And I'd say, well, I'd love to see you, come over for tea or something. So I think, but I do think the rest of us, we all need to grieve what we've lost. And if you think about what you lost in the pandemic, I recommend making a list, because it's shocking I lost, graduations. I have a grandson who's Jewish, and there was supposed to be a big bar mitzvah, and it turned out he couldn't do that. So we had like 20 of us gathered in a tent in his backyard, but I got there, but then there were all the other people that couldn't get there, and he never had the big party that he was supposed to have. And then there's all the walks I couldn't take for when we were kind of restricted to our building. So we all lost the plays we didn't see, and especially for me, I don't know for you, when it came to Thanksgiving and Christmas this year, I didn't go anywhere. And I had never in 85 years had a Thanksgiving and Christmas without my family, or some member of my family. So I think those have to be mourned too. And we have to realize, and and then I think if we actually feel when we're sad, to feel that sadness, it'll go away quicker. And it won't ever go away for you, for your husband, but I think it will get to the point where life is, you feel differently. And, you're not, I know for me, a couple of years, I was, sort of on my own for a couple of years. Then I actually have found I found a new love. And so 2 years ago, so here I am at 84, with a new love, and I have apartment 205, his was 605, so we were running back and forth. And then during the pandemic, we said you can't run back and forth anymore. There's too many germs. You have to pick one apartment to be in. So anyway, I was the first person that I said had kind of enforced cohabitation, and so anyway, it's hard, but I think you need other people to help you. That's what I think, get through it. And some people know exactly how to help make you feel better.
Thank you, Catherine.
Yeah.
I have another one here.
Doug has raised his hand too. So after whatever we'll go
Okay, Doug, why don't you go ahead?
You got to unmute though, Doug.
Where's Doug?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Good. On this thing, when I signed up, my wife got your book, and the questions and interesting. Our oldest daughter has the family business now, and I communicated to her a lot, but there's some other questions that I'm thinking I'm not communicating enough. And so I thank you, Kathy, with your book on this, and look forward to it.
There's my old nickname there coming out. He knew me when I was Patsy. That's what, so anyway, that I waited to hear it. But anyway, good. Well, I'm glad the book is helpful. I really am, because I think we all need help, and we still all dread aging, no matter how much good news we hear. it's something that needs to change in our society. So I now have the small mission of trying to get all of us to revision what old age is. And I don't know if you are working on that too, and if you believe with me that we need to change our society. We still don't. We still kind of age. There's too much ageism going on, and we have a lot of work to do to make the world. I mean, I notice even here at my retirement community, the chairs in the living room. People with disabilities can't use the chairs because they're too low. They can't get out of the chairs. So I mean, nobody designed the world for old people. There weren't any old people when they made the. Okay, we had another question. Yeah, but.
Yep. So we had a couple come in ahead of this event here. One was by Ginny Weeks. I don't believe I see her on the call here, but I'll ask it anyways. It was the pros and cons of keeping aging parents in their home. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a good one. How many here are facing that in any way? Anybody else facing it? Yeah, Nancy is. Okay. I think, you know, in the old days, everybody stayed home. And today, that isn't a possibility for, I mean, it's very hard for some people if their kids don't live nearby. And I think a lot of it, I am have been a huge supporter of a retirement community. I think because I've had so much fun, and when my husband was sick, it was so supportive. I had the medical help, and it just made it possible. And if I had been alone, and he had said he couldn't stay in the house alone. So I think the circumstances sort of take care of themselves if there's medical problems. But I think everybody, I am now saying the one thing you want to avoid is social isolation. And the worst thing is if you get in a little house at the end of the road in the country and you can't drive at night anymore. And so people are alone all the time. I believe that we are social animals. So that's the way I lean. And I think sometimes people can go live near their kids. That's good. They're at a certain stage. Sometimes you have, I think what I found, and this is interesting to answer to that as you get older, you know, family gets more important. That's true. But family is very busy. They're, you know, for the aging parents, your kids are really doing a lot of working and bringing up their kids. So actually, when you're in your 70s and 80s, you spend more time with your friends, and that friends become more important than ever. And that this is how that a good life is where you have a lot of social connections. So that's what I would be thinking about when you're trying to, and we really should be in places where we have community and it's easily available. So that's the kick I'm on now. But I think it was so powerful in the pandemic that we learned firsthand what it feels like. You know, I had months and people in my retirement community had some of the singles were alone for a whole 12 weeks of not seeing anybody else in real person. So you probably had it too. Okay.
Richard, did you have a question? Did I see you, Richard Curtis? Did I see you raising your hand there? Did you have a question? No, okay. I thought I saw your hand go up. I do have another question that was submitted by Roy. I see you are on the call. Would you like to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Lower left. Yeah.
Left.
There you are.
Okay, and my question was, I'm sorry.
Oh, I think you had submitted a question about the role of a set daily routine.
How much of focusing on a daily routine preserves mental acuteness? And how important is it for us to adhere to a daily routine of things we enjoy doing?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, I think I'm very pro routine, but then I want to say, and what else, but plus, routines plus. So we'll go to the routines. I do think we all know that to live well, that it's exercise is just the basic foundation of living well. And so I do think a routine of exercise is absolutely the starting place. And then I think then you need to add into it. I'm a meditator now. How many people here meditate? Anybody? A few, but meditation is such a helped me so much. And there's some very good apps. I used the Headspace, and I recommend that to my clients because it's not difficult. I was a kind of failed meditator for years. It just seemed I couldn't do it. It was just too hard. My brain wouldn't do it. But I finally went to a course, but then the Headspace works, and it's really changed my life. I'm a really energized person, but I find that I need to calm down and take it easy, and it's been just great for me. So I build a routine, and I have advocated I have a whole blog about you should have a routine. I don't know if it preserves the brain agility. I do think what I think they're finding that preserves your agility is variation from a routine, is doing something new, breaking the routine. So I think the routine, you start with a routine, and they do say it's good for your health to get up at the same time. And I think, but you have to kind of be yourself. I happen to get up early, and I happen to and then I have my clients now that is a routine. So I know on Thursday this is going to happen. And I've got some Zoom groups. No, I got my life so full of Zoom groups that it was too busy, but and I had to let go. So, but what I think the new things, the variation from routine, I think that's what is hard, especially we're not really post-pandemic yet. We're still kind of, I don't know, how many of you have had your 2 shots in your 14 days?
Yes.
Yes, good. 3/4 of us have. And to me, that was liberation, real liberation. But I think that, so then you have to be imaginative, Roy. This is the question, how do you break the routine? And now Ellen Langer has written this book called Mindfulness, which is about a 20-year-old book. And it's not mindfulness like meditation. It's mindfulness like awareness. And her sense is, as you get old, you don't keep that awareness. And so this is what we need to keep our so that we don't just walk through our days doing our routines and not knowing, or sometimes you've probably driven and you don't remember anything you did. And she says that's what's the killer for aging. And you really need, so I recommend her book, Ellen Langer, Langer, Mindfulness. It's a short book. And both my husband and I, we felt we would keep reading it and that it would change our life. And that was my first approach to aging, was to how after I read that book, and I've read it maybe 3 times since. I go back to it because I think it is profound. And even now today, I was thinking just this week, my new love doesn't walk. He's on a walker, so we can't do walks, but so I have to I was thinking about how are we going to enjoy the spring? And there was a beautiful sunny day back there. So I had read about the Japanese, how when the cherry blossoms are in bloom, people go and just take a chair out and sit under a cherry blossom tree and sit there for an hour and just be there with the blooms. And that seemed like such an interesting thing to do. I said, well, we can't do that, but let's go around and look for the blossoming trees. And we found a house, which was great, had 3 huge pink trees in it. So I thought, oh, that wasn't my house, so I couldn't go sit up a chair, but it was just it was like a fun thing to do. And I'd never gone looking for flowering trees before. So, I think it's somehow and you all probably have ideas of how you break your routines. I mean, and how you think about it. So what's your routine now, Roy?
I have taken to recreational reading.
Okay.
And this is a big break from the professional and research reading that I did for my productive life. And I've thoroughly enjoyed recreational reading. I use the Sunday Times to help me find well-respected books, both fiction and nonfiction. And this has been a dominant area of my retired life, if you will.
So do you do it at a certain time? Do we do it like going to the office?
I have an office in my house.
Yeah.
And I spend about 6 hours a day in the office, separate from the time that I'm with my wife in social activities. So yes, it's become a pattern.
Yeah, well, that makes total sense to me. Is there any book that you've in your recreational reading that you'd like to recommend to the crowd here that was your favorite?
They have been varied and numerous, and I just, again, I choose from the New York Times best books, and have enjoyed them, have enjoyed the variety.
And I think that brings up the other point about aging is aging is an opportunity to explore what we couldn't do in our regular life. So you were doing research, you have recreational. And I think this is also something interesting I've observed between men and women, that women develop more kind of things that we think that go with men, traditionally interests of men. Women start getting interested in money, following the stock market. Men get interested in cooking that they have never done. Men have been blocked out, many of them, from cooking. And now I have many friends that the man is doing the cooking and the wife isn't. She's sick of it. She's cooked for all those years. And so we develop with the gender prescriptions kind of weaken as we get over into 60s and 70s, and we try things that so it's kind of a huge opportunity to explore the whole world of things that we haven't done. Okay,
I'm just looking at the time. Any last question? Oh, Kenny?
Kimmy has a question.
Yeah.
I don't have a question. I just have a couple of comments. I graduated in '64, which I didn't realize I could put on there. So I think a few of the faces are familiar to me, or at least the names. This has been absolutely wonderful. I wish it could go on all afternoon, but I guess I better get busy and read the book. I just wanted to share on the topic of grief that I had gotten a book recommended to me. It's called Threads of Hope.
Okay.
And it's by, Rotundo. And it's very short, but it's to the point. And it's not just grief of someone dying, but we have so many griefs in our life, and we don't have to hold on to them. And then the other thing was, during this COVID thing, I had children, well, one nearby, but one far away, and there had been some health issues with my son and so on. And I don't need to go into that, but I started worrying. And so I decided that what I needed to do was we needed to be in touch every day. I didn't want it to be a phone call and all this, because they're busy and so forth. So every morning, we send each other an emoji of some sort, whether it's a heart or it's a cup of coffee or the sun is shining. And that way I knew that they were okay, which I was really more concerned about them because their lives, I can stay in my little hole here, but their lives are out there, and we continue to do it. So I'm just grateful for that. I'm grateful for this Thank you, Catherine.
Oh, you're welcome. I mean, you've been a great audience and it's interesting to hear that. I've not heard that. I'm going to add that to my kind of repertoire of ways to be connected, that the quick and easy modern way, send an emoji. That's great.
So any final thoughts or comments before we wrap up here?
Well, I hope you do read the book. I hope you, I love the comments, when you, in your questions, so you can send me an email, and I hope you enjoy the book. And I hope that, that you kind of shift your attitude of aging and see that there's so much to look forward to, and that can, your attitude. And just one last fact, that if you have positive attitudes towards aging, that in itself you'll live 7.5 years more than people that don't have a positive attitude toward aging. So should be enough to take this on as a serious quest. If you don't have a positive attitude, you're still dreading it. Okay.
That's great.
Thank you all. This was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, big thank you again to you, Catherine, and to all of you for joining us today. This was fabulous.